I guess my first question was for those that don't know. I guess what are Native American artifacts? If you want to describe them and arrowheads, and
Well,
how do you find them?
Native American artifacts are the tools, the weapons that the first people in America used, the cooking tools. It's all a part of their culture, their material culture, and it's the Stone Age. They were essentially in the Stone Age when the Europeans met them. There were some metals, but here in Ohio and early on, the artifacts that we pick up are all flint and or hard stone, if it's a hammer or an axe or something like that. But yeah, the tools are basically stone tools because everything else kind of disintegrates and doesn't survive.
Cool. That's good. So, when did you start looking for Native American artifacts and collecting? Is it like if you can
Okay,
tell that story?
it started. I was about 5 years old, and I was coming out of Hesselbart's cornfield, and there was a little red arrowhead there, and I picked it up. And you pick up an arrowhead, and all of a sudden you have questions about it. I mean, whose arrowhead was it? What kind of Indians were they? And the only reference I had at 5 was Rin Tin Tin and Fort Apache. And so I'm thinking, is this an arrowhead from the Apache Indians? And my mom wanted to help me out, so she took me to the Hayes Memorial Museum to see if I could find some answers. And it was pretty clear from their collections. They said that their collections were all prehistoric, and they weren't historic Indians at all, but much, much earlier cultures. And that was the beginning. And I found arrowheads and tools along Muddy Creek, actually coming right out of the banks and on the cow path that I would walk to get down to the creek. So it became quite natural. And I wasn't the only one that looked. David Overmeyer looked, Bruce Murray looked, and we would share the evidence that we had found, and we would start hunting the fields together. And it was just a good time. And us 3 guys did it consistently because one of us found an arrowhead. And then they all found arrowheads. I mean, everybody found arrowheads. It was great.
Awesome. Good origin story. So, do you remember a specific spot and like a point where looking for artifacts became more than a hobby and that obsession? I know you kind of mentioned that earlier. Like,
Well, yeah, I tell you what. I used to hunt Bogart's field, and I really became obsessed with Bogart's because there was such a wide variety of artifacts, arrowheads, from different cultures. I mean, each artifact can pretty much be identified as to what culture it was with or what time period it was with. And we call them diagnostic artifacts. And I became obsessed when I moved to Bodkins, and every field I went into, I found an arrowhead. Every field I went into. And I was keeping track. And 72 straight times I went into fields and would pick up artifacts. I would get permission. Farmers would often tell me, "You're not going to find anything here. I've lived here for 50 years. My parents were here for 50 before that. No one's ever found an arrowhead." I'd walk in, pick up an arrowhead, and take it up to you didn't find that here. But, I did. And there were times when I got crazy because I started to think that I was being guided by some kind of a spirit, because it seemed like wherever I went, I was finding arrowheads. And I would get feelings like I was driving down Lock 2 Road and by the Boy Scout woods, and all of a sudden there's an arrowhead out here in this field. I got to go. I stopped the car, just put it in park, walked out into the field and found about a 3.5-inch blade and walked back. And that's when I started getting crazy and started thinking, this is real. This is real. But, once you get skunked a few times, then you realize that spirit's gone.
I love that.
Yeah. So, I spent way too much time collecting because my wife had 3 kids early on. We had 3 kids together. And I would take my girls and my son with me. And the girls, Nikki and Leslie, would actually carry Ryan because he was so small. And so, I mean, I even had them looking for arrowheads, but it was torture. It was torture. They were too young.
I understand.
That's an obsession. I had an obsession. It was terrible.
Yeah, my dad did the same. He waited a little bit, I think, to bring us out, so
Yeah.
it worked out. But yeah, okay, so can you recount the time of like when you came to discover the Milky site? When you're out there.
Yeah, the Milky site actually was a multi-component site. I had found all kinds of early archaic points, middle archaic points, even some woodland points, and even a Mississippian triangle. And I realized at that time, everybody was here. Everybody. And of course, you can't tell why. There's no way to tell why. What was the attraction? But every culture was there. And I had a friend, Tom Wick, that would go with me in the winter. And Tom was one of these guys that in the winter, the ground is frozen. And you find an arrowhead and it's frozen in a clod of mud. Frozen dirt is rock hard. And so Tom would pee on everything and thaw it out. And this is the guy that could pee at will, anytime, anywhere, as long as he needed to. And so that's how we got the arrowheads out in the winter. But Tom was my partner. And but still at that point, it was just archaic points, middle archaic mostly, and a few late. What turned it around was my wife in about 71 was doing an exam for me. And it was probably in May. And she needed duplicating paper. And I said, look, I'm going to go to the school and get some duplicating paper, so because that's what you typed everything on, so you could run them off. And she said to me, don't you dare look for arrowheads, because it had just rained. We lived in a trailer. And when you live in a trailer and it rains, man, I'm telling you, hear every raindrop. I mean, man, it just hammers the place. But this was a real storm. And when there's a real storm, you know something's been washed off. So I lied to her. I left, went straight down to the field, took 3 steps into the field. And I mean, it was muddy. There was water everywhere. And in that water, I saw a glint of flint. It was under the water. I reached down, and as I picked it up, my forefinger and thumb rested on the flute on each side of that point. And I knew instantly what it was. I didn't even have to look at it. I knew what it was. I had never had a fluted point, but I knew what a fluted point was. I drove back to the school real fast, washed off my shoes in the boys' restroom sink, washed off the arrowhead, stuck it in my pocket, put my shoes back on, went to the teacher's lounge, got the masters, came back to the trailer as if nothing had happened, and never said a word to her about what I had found. But I knew from that point on I'd really have to start looking hard, because I was hoping. And then it was not that much later. Martha Maurer went with me. She was one of the students. She was a senior at that time, just getting ready for graduation. And I took her out to the field, looked for arrowheads, and I found another Clovis point. This one was made out of hornstone. And then, it wasn't about a few weeks later, I found another Clovis point, a blue one, and made out of the same material, Harrodsburg shirt, that the first one was made out of. And then I knew I had a site. I had something special. And I basically asked everybody else to stay away. It didn't work. There were people from New Bremen that kept coming. I never saw them. I didn't know who they were, but their footprints were always there before mine were. And so I'm sure that a lot of material was not found by me, that it left the site. So the site, I'm sure, was a lot bigger than what I was able to discover.
Yeah. That's the sad part about it. But, are there any like extra relevant fun stories or anything you wish to share about looking for artifacts in general? Like I tacked this one on here. but
Okay.
if you
Well,
think of anything.
you know, it's just always fun to find something that no human has touched. I'll wait for the phone call. No human has touched for thousands of years, except you and that other person. And there's kind of a connection. I mean, it's just like kind of a connection with every artifact you find. You just kind of feel that human touch, even though they've been long gone. And I'll repeat that just because of the phone call. So I think what I want to say is that there's a human connection with every artifact. Every artifact is unique. You know that someone lost that artifact. Someone laid that artifact down. A human hand made it, and a human hand left it. And now you're the first human to pick it up in possibly thousands of years. With the Clovis points, I was the first one to pick those up in 13,000 years. That makes things just seem so much more special when you know the age and the time difference between when they were here in Botkins and now when I am here in Botkins. And the way things have changed. I mean, that was the most important tool that they had. And look how we've advanced in 13,000 years from the Stone Age to whatever this is. We're all related. We all realize that we're related. We're all in this together. Life is so precious. And even though they're gone, what they left behind is extremely important for us to at least get a feel and an understanding for what they did when they were here.
Awesome. That's really good stuff. Cool. I guess I'll go on to the not so bright side of it. Would you want to talk about, like, recount how having, like, your collection at school thrown out affected your thoughts on collecting?
Yeah. In Ohio history, I taught Ohio history. I had diagnostic artifacts for every cultural period, for every time period as well. And so there was a Clovis point in that group too, but it was just the bottom half because I wanted the kids to feel the flute. I wanted the kids to feel the grinding and the polish that they put into that point because it was unique. The other points didn't have flutes, And then, of course, I had early archaic points. I had middle archaic, late archaic. I had woodland points. I had all of those things in these diagnostic collections. And I would pass them around and say, okay, all these kids had the possibility of finding their own artifacts. And if they found their own artifacts, I wanted them to have an idea as to what the age was on what they were picking up. How long ago were people on their farms, And I had groundstone tools because not everything is flint, not everything is chipped. Some of that stuff is packed, ground, and polished. And so I had every stage of pounding, pecking, grinding, and polishing at every stage. And so I had a celt or an axe roughly hewed out, pecked out, polished the bit, then polished the whole thing, and then completely polished. So you saw no evidence of any of the earlier workmanship. And so I had a little axe from the Scioto River, from an important Hopewell site. I mean, there were just a lot of little things that I found. And the janitor had said that he was going to paint the room and he wanted me to move my stuff out. Well, we use my room every year to stretch and to get ready for the state meet because there were always kids that qualified for state, and I was the coach. And by qualifying, we had to have a place to go. We didn't have a track. We used the front yard on the school. That's where we ran, and then we ran the block around the school for for distance work. So we didn't have much equipment, but the kids were still good enough to qualify for state, and so it was fantastic that we could go. And I said, well, look, we're going to be having some kids go to state. You call me when you want me to bring my stuff and move my stuff out of the room. Just give me a call, and I'll be over. Well, I had forgotten all about it. A week before school started in August, I walked into the room, and yep, it had been repainted. It looked great. I looked around. I didn't see my stack of artifacts. And I ran out in the hall, and I saw Ron Market at the end of the hall. And I said, hey, Ron, somebody broke into the school this summer and stole the artifacts that were in my room. And he laughed, And he said, Milky, nobody broke into the school this summer and stole your artifacts. And I said, what do you mean? They're not here. Where are they? I can't find them. He said, we threw them away. And of course, at that point, I'm pretty agitated. And he comes up to the room. I says, what are you talking about? He said, Clarence said that he told you to come over. He called you, told you to come over and clean that stuff out so we could paint. And you didn't come over. So he said, just throw them in the dumpster and get rid of them. And I said, Ron, Clarence never called me. I never got a call. I would have been over here in a heartbeat. All he had to do was just say the word. I would have moved the stuff out, brought it home, and then brought it back for the beginning of school. Well, at that moment, I was so angry. If Clarence Bear had been there, I would have tried to kill him. I mean, he would have defended himself, and I wouldn't have been able to kill him, but I would have tried. I would have got him on the phone. I would have tried to beat his brains out, really. It would have been awful. But he would have probably defended himself. He'd have been fine. But I would have been fired. I would have definitely lost my job. So I cooled down a little bit, and I realized, I'm thinking, man, I got to get out in the fields. I got some walking to do. I've got a lot of walking to do. I get home, and I'm sitting on what was a different couch at the time, but I'm sitting, because this is 1982, the summer of 1982. We live in this house at that time. And I pull my boots on, and I can't tie them up. It hit me all at once. Every single artifact that they had thrown away was unique, totally unique. None of them could be replaced. They're gone forever. And I was done. In the summer of 1982, I was finished hunting for arrowheads. That was it. I only lost one part of that Clovis point, though. You know, one of the Clovis points in that dumpster that they threw away. The rest of the stuff was still at home. And I had shared this stuff with Bob Converse, who was the head of the archaeological publication, the Quarterly, and he was probably the president of the organization on different occasions. And Bob was the best amateur archaeologist in Ohio. But he couldn't get any professionals to touch the stuff. I think there was some kind of envy going on in the 70s and 80s. Professionals did not want to work with amateurs for some reason. And no matter how hard Bob tried, he knew it was a very important site. He published it in the Ohio Archaeology. He published it in a book that he wrote about Ohio archaeology, but he couldn't get any professionals to go after it. I tried to share it with a professor at Ohio State University. I left my stuff there for 4 years. They didn't do a thing with it. I went and got it, brought it back. That's when Bob published it in his book. Had the guys look at it from Cleveland State. They weren't interested. They were into Mississippian stuff, not paleo. And then, it wasn't just but a couple of years ago, that I saw a presentation by Met and Aaron. And I told him, I said, I think I've got something that you'll be interested in. I said, when can you stop off at Botkin's? And he told me later, he said, you know, Dave, he said, I have people tell me all the time, I've got some stuff you'll really be interested in. And I go, and I don't want to embarrass them, but it's nothing I'm really interested in. But when I saw your stuff, I had to have it. So I donated it to the Cleveland Museum of Natural History because that's where it's deposited, and then anybody else can look at it as well. But Met and Aaron did the work with several other archaeologists on the site, and it appears that there's evidence that this site may be the first congregational site. And it's all speculation on congregational sites, but they believe that these early people who were coming across the continent were coming in small clans. They were coming in clans of 20 to 30 people. And they knew the terrain. I mean, and they remembered where all their resources were. Whenever they discovered something, they knew where the animals were, the herds were. They knew where they were feeding. And they would share that information when they would come together at congregational sites. And they would share the the flint sources and other things that they had found. And what they found was that some of the flint that was used on this Clovis site was from Illinois. 2 of the sites for the flint was Indiana, 1 was in Kentucky, 3 were in Ohio, and 1 was Pennsylvania. And so, when you got resources for these people that were so disparate, so far apart, over 500 miles apart, you kind of don't think that, of course, they're coming from the west. The first time through, they're coming from the west because they came across the Bering Strait, and they're moving pretty fast because, they covered they covered the continent in probably 200 to 300 years. From one end to the other. They really moved. Well, they probably didn't go to Illinois, pick up some flint, come to Indiana, pick up some flint, go to Kentucky, pick up some flint, come into Ohio, pick up some flint, go to Pennsylvania, pick up some flint, and then come all the way over to Botkins? No. That's not too likely. So the possibility is, and it's only a possibility, is that there were several groups that had these resources, that had discovered these resources, and they had communicated, let's meet and share some of our knowledge. One of the things that they may have shared would have been the women, to avoid incest. Now, there was no science back then, but it appears that these early peoples understood that incest was not a good thing. How they knew that, we don't know. But it seems like all early people seemed to understand that because incest was very limited. And that's why they believed that there had to be congregational sites to exchange, and more than likely exchange women. And so that's what makes this site so special. It's the possibility that this may be the first congregational site that's ever been found in North America. So I owe Matt Nairn everything for the research and the work that he did, to find out the sources for the Clovis points, where it came from. That was just awesome. And because when you got 7 different places that it's coming from and it's so far apart, and none of it's to the north. Okay? It's all south, okay? South of the St. John Moraine. And I think that makes it kind of special too. Because there are other paleo sites in Ohio, but they're all north. They've got materials from the north coming down and they're sharing the materials on these sites. But not here. That's why I think that this may be one of the earliest Clovis sites in the state of Ohio. So why people wanted to come to Botkins, I don't know. People are still coming to Botkins. They've been coming to Botkins for over 13,000 years, okay? And they're still here. There's something about Botkins, okay? There's something about it. I don't know why. Paleo, archaic, woodland, Mississippian. They're all here. All the cultures were here. And then the white guys were here too. And we're still here now.
It's a captivating place, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess, could you dig a little bit more into the personal significance of looking for artifacts? Why did you do it? Why do you do it now? What does it mean to you personally?
Well, I think that the artifacts help us tell a story about who was here before us. I know that we can look at the skill they had. They had some great skill in the manipulation of the flint to create the sharpest edges and sharpest points to be able to survive in what had to be a tough environment. The thing of it is, and I've never dug. Everything that I have found has been on the surface. It's been in the plow zone. So it's not in situ. Nothing I've ever found has been in situ. It's always been exposed. It's always been mixed up. But archaeologists, when I was out at Cahokia, and then you've got that walled city, you had 20,000 people living out there. And they had 7 towns, and each town specialized in something. One town specialized in deer, butchering deer. Another one grew beans and pumpkins and corn or maize, and it fed the city. They had set that up to feed the city. And you've got the Temple Mound, where the chieftain, or of course we don't know what he was called because it was all gone before we got here. But it was the highest point of anywhere around there. And they built that up. They built that mound. And we assume that it's very similar to the Aztecs, or the leader of the Aztecs also took credit for the sun coming up, you know? And you go all the way back to the Egyptian pharaohs, you know, making sure that everything is done properly. So the sun would come across, you know? And so there's people who are taking responsibility for nature. They're taking, hey, we're the ones that did this. You know, I mean, it happened in Egypt. It happened in Mexico. It happened in North America. And so, you know, you see these things. And now you know that there were a lot of sacrifices, blood sacrifices in Mexico. I mean, you've seen the skulls and all that stuff. There were a lot of sacrifices here too, okay? And, you know, you find the graves where the heads are severed and set off to the side. And I mean, you realize that, you know, when 53 people in a grave and they're all women, something's going on, okay? There's just a lot of different things that we can learn about these early cultures. We'll never really understand their beliefs because those are forever gone. But I think it's a shame to stop the exploration of these mounds that possibly will give us better answers to the belief systems that these people had. Like I said, the only thing that I'm picking up is what's already in the plow zone. I'm not interfering with anything that's in situ in the ground. And yet, you know, we've learned how culture changes too. I mean, you know, look how fast our culture changes. Their cultures were changing about every 200 to 300 years. The artifacts would be constructed differently, different shapes, you know? What was causing that? Why did that happen? But that's what I see, you know, when I'm doing surface collecting. I can pick up a point and, you know, it's a diagnostic artifact. You know what it because of its shape, you know how old it is. And just like the Clovis points, because of their shape, because of their technology, the technology that was used to make them, we know how old they are. So I think that's the connection that I have, is just trying to answer questions that people have about those that came before us. I think we're all curious. You know, we all want to know who they were, you know.
So our teachers get on us for being balanced and stuff. I know he might ask me, like, is there another side who might be against artifact collecting? I was like, so maybe if you would like to address like possible ethical concerns, like what would you say to somebody who didn't approve of like just walking out in farm fields and picking up artifacts? How would you counter that?
Well, I think the best example of that, when you don't pick up, you know, when you don't pick up the artifacts, they get broken, they get destroyed. Now these were all picked up just within a 2-month period this summer, when the publication came out, and this is the publication. Remember, I hadn't looked for arrowheads since 1982 because I couldn't get myself to do it. But when this publication comes out with the Clovis site report, all of a sudden I wanted to find more, okay? I wanted to find another Clovis site because this is the only one in Western Ohio, period. And you know there's got to be other ones. This isn't the only place these people came. So it got me excited, and this field was the only field that didn't have crops in it. Gene Schaub had it. And I went to his house and I said, hey, I see you didn't plant. He said, well, I had tiles break. Because the tiles broke, it was a mess. And it was too wet this spring. So I decided to put it in a different program and get paid to not grow anything. And I said, could I get permission? He said, well, what's in it for me? I said, well, I reached in my wallet, pulled out $50, handed him $50. He said, sure. Well, what I didn't know was I'm out in the field hunting for arrowheads. And all of a sudden, this huge pickup truck comes out. And there's like 4 people in the truck. And the guy driving says, who are you? What are you doing? I said, I'm looking for arrowheads. Who gave you permission? I said, Gene Schaub. The guy said, Gene Schaub doesn't own this field. I said, oh, I thought he did. I thought he did. He said, no. He said, this lady right here owns this field. And there was an elderly lady sitting in the cab with him. And I said, you know, I asked Gene for permission. And he said, what's in it for me? And I gave him $50, and the whole cab lit up laughing. They all said, that's Gene. That's Gene. And the lady said, you can hunt here anytime you want to. So that was the story on getting permission for this particular site. But it opened the door. Now I do want to collect again. And I do hope that somewhere along the St. John Moraine, there are other Clovis sites. This surely can't be the only place that these people camped. There had to be a reason they camped here. We'll never know why they camped here. But you have to realize, I mean, it's on what we call the Lorney Creek, which takes them, if they want to, go into the Miami River and into the Ohio River, down the Gulf if they wanted to. I mean, if they wanted to. Or they could go 6 miles to the Au Glaize, take the Au Glaize into the Maumee, and go right into Lake Erie if they wanted to. And the neat thing is, they're going downstream either way, you know? So yeah, they could float all the way to Lake Erie, or they could float all the way to the Mississippi. So that might be a part of the reason why this location was so critical, because it is the high point. It's the divide for the state of Ohio, the St. John Moraine. That might help explain a little bit of it. But I think, you know, having access to these, I don't know how, I don't know how, it seems like early peoples were more or less afraid of water. Early peoples around the world seem to believe that there were spirits that would pull them under. I mean, Europe's same way, ancient Greece, everybody. They just believed that people would pull them. And there's evidence that the Native American Indians felt the same way. So I don't know how courageous they would have been on these creeks and rivers, but not too. When I found out where the Harrodsburg Church came from for the Clovis site, I got these topographical maps, and I looked, and I could see that they could pick up the flint that they used to make these points, and they could walk on dry land all the way to Botkins. And so my assumption was they were on high ground. They were coming from the west, but they were staying on the high ground wherever they could. That was my thought. Now, whether that was true or not, I don't know if that's true, because we weren't there. But I told that to Metten. I said, I really believe that it's the high ground that's important, more so than the water. But, you know, they had to have water. I mean, water is essential. We drink water every day. They drink water every day. They had to have it. So yeah, water is going to be an important part of their lives. And there's water here at the creek, and there's water at the rivers, and so on.
I know we've hit on like the historical importance of like finding and documenting the existence of these before they're destroyed, I guess. So like, what does it mean to you again to have your work documented in that site, and like just doubling down on?
It wasn't that big of a deal until Met and Aaron said, Milky's going down in science. You're going to be a part of science. This is going to be recorded in your name. And I said, it's been called the Beeler site. I've always called this the Beeler site my whole life because Beelers own the land. Well, Bob Converse said the same thing. Bob Converse called it the Milky site too. I said the same thing to Bob. I said, don't we call this the Beeler site? Because it's theirs. He said, did they find it? I said, no. He said, did you find it? I said, yeah. He said, that's why it's the Milky site. Metten said the same thing. Metten said, you found the site. It's the Milky site. Okay. Then I get this publication, and of course, here's what hit me. Here's what hit me. This is what hit me. When I open this up and I look at all the Clovis sites in the state of Ohio, okay? And there's a red star there. And by that red star, there's one word, and that word says Milky. That's when it hit me. I went to a family reunion, and I told them I was about to put Milky on the map. And it did. It put Milky on the map. And that, I don't know. That's when what Metten had said earlier about I was going to be a part of science, that's when it hit me that I was, to see the Milky name on that site, on that map. Yeah, so, yeah, it got me. It got me pretty good, Caden. It got me pretty good.
I imagine. I can only imagine. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great stuff. And so, yeah, I guess now for the last one, if you want to talk about how you've gone out looking now after the collection's been thrown out, and like what made you go back there, and you could show some of the points too.
Yeah. I went back because I knew this is published. Once the site was published, I felt free. Now I hate to say this. There's a nasty part of this too. When Clarence died, this is terrible. I felt free again. I never said anything to him about throwing away the site. I never approached him. I didn't know if I would become too enraged. I didn't know. I guess I've got kind of a temper or something, and I wasn't sure how I would react. So I never asked Clarence about it, never said anything to him about it. I let it go. But when he died, and sadly he died of cancer, I don't wish a man to die. It's not that. But there was just, when he died, I just, like with this, the combination of the two encouraged me to go out and then to go out and to find so much. And I realized, and then this is just one field, okay? This is just one field. And what I'm really looking for, though, is Clovis. I was looking for Clovis. And what excited me was there's early archaic here. There's woodland here. There is even Mississippi in here. So I'm seeing again on this site, all the cultures are here. Is it possible at some time next spring when they plow the field and plant it, that there's going to be a Clovis connection? I mean, something drew them here. Every culture that you can imagine is here. Is it going to be that Clovis, the next Clovis? I don't know. But I want to find out.
Yeah. That's wicked. That's great stuff. I think that's pretty much what I got for questions. So, I mean, if there's anything else you want to add, yeah.
I feel blessed. My whole life, I felt blessed. I mean, my wife has made my life so fantastic. We had 3 kids together. They're all great kids. Love them. Super kids. She enabled me to collect. I mean, she resented it. Because, I mean, I was away from the house, but she still let me go. And she watched the kids. That wasn't a good thing. And then, here I am in track and cross country. I'm gone every Saturday. You know, I'm not around. She's got the kids. She's got the kids. Then I got, of course, we didn't talk about the fossils. But is that still running, or is it all?
Oh yeah, I just
Okay.
kept it going.
Okay, keep it going, because I'll tell you the rest of this, because you know a little bit about this. So here's what happened. I take the 8th graders to Washington, D.C., and we're at the Smithsonian, and I see this collection of trilobites, and Tom Johnson has displayed them there, and they were fantastic. And they see that they're from Dayton, they're south of Dayton, they're from Caesars Creek. Whew. I called the kids over and I said, man, we're going to find fossils. This is in '89, okay? This is 7 years after the collection's been thrown away. I'm not doing anything. And all of a sudden I see trilobites, and boom. That was the beginning. That was an explosion. You can see what an explosion that was if you just go into that other room. That is the explosion of my life. Because we come back, say to Mrs. Snyder, who's the principal at the time, I want to take the kids to look for some fossils. I called Tom Johnson. I got his name from the president of the dry dredgers. I found him, called him and said, you know, I want to find trilobites. He said, look, there are 130 members in the club. Some of these guys have been in this club for over 30 years, have never found a trilobite. And they've looked. He said, your expectations might be a little bit too high. It's not going to be easy, okay? So since then, I found thousands, okay? He made it sound like it was going to be tough. But again, I was lucky. I could go through how lucky I was, but I'm not going to. I just want to tell you that I took the class down, 40-some kids, walk across the floodplain there at Caesars Creek, find 2 little trilobites, come back, call Tom Johnson. What did we do wrong? Tom says, did you crawl on your hands and knees? Did you have your head about 2 foot off the ground? I said, no. He said, well, they're so small, you're going to have to get down. I said, okay. Come back to school, tell the kids, look, I screwed up. I can't get you out of another day of school, though. You're going to have to go on a Saturday, get permission from your parents, bring knee pads from your sisters who play volleyball, bring your mom's gardening gloves. I said, we're going to try it again. 11 kids show up that Saturday. We go down. Of course, my nickname was Doc. They get out of that bus. They're crawling across that floodplain. All I hear is Doc, 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 Doc. These kids are going crazy. Now, they're finding little brachiopods mostly. But when it's all said and done, they found over 40 trilobites. That's 4 per kid. It was awesome. It was awesome. I was hooked. At that point, I was hooked. And, I mean, you can see what's happened to that explosion since then. Because, I mean, I've gone to Sylvania. One of the guys there gave me a key to get in. That doesn't happen. I went to Paulding. The quarry manager, Wayne Wilkening, said, I can let you come in every Friday because we don't work on Friday here in the quarry. You can come in every Friday. I'm teaching school. And he tells me that. Every Friday. I looked out the window. I didn't want to be in a single one of my classes. I could only imagine what was going on at the quarry, what was exposed at the quarry, what was laying out at the quarry. I went to my principal. I went to Connie Snyder again. I said, Connie, I can't stand being here on Fridays. I said, I want to get out of here. She said, why don't you take off? She said, you got a free period on 8th period, 7th period, you got a study hall. Why don't you have somebody take your study hall and you can leave at 1? I said, okay. So on Fridays, I started leaving at 1 o'clock so that I could get to the quarry, pick up a few things, and keep going. Well, I don't know who the teacher was. I can imagine who it was, though. Somebody saw that I was leaving early on Fridays. Somebody noticed it and went to Mrs. Snyder and said, hey, what's Doc leaving on Friday for? Where's he going? He's always got somebody doing his study hall. And Connie said, well, he's taking his sick leave one period at a time. Okay. And I told Connie, I said, look, I don't want anyone to feel like you're playing favorites among the teachers. I can't do that. I don't want to put that kind of pressure on you. So I'm going to retire. She said, you can't retire. Told Deegan, the superintendent, I said, hey, I got to get out of here. He said, are you kidding? He said, I thought you'd teach here till you died. I said, no, I got to go. I got to go. So I wrote the resignation and handed it in. And that first fall, I mean, I was there almost every day. I'm telling you something right now. The winter of 1999, 2000, there was only one day when there was any snow on the ground. One day. I mean, I went bananas. The weather was so perfect. So, I mean, again, the obsession. I mean, I'm an obsessive guy. It's not good. It's not good because I laid it all on my wife again. You know, here I'm gone. She's taking care of everything else. She's got a beauty shop to run. And all I'm thinking about is fossils. That's all I'm thinking about is fossils. So, I'm the luckiest guy in the world because I mean, all you got to do is look. You just got to look, and you can see that you can't get any luckier than I've gotten. And I still love to hunt. And you know I'm going Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Only not to those two favorite quarries, because what I didn't realize was, here's what was happening. My wife would say, haven't you found enough? When are you going to say you found enough? And of course my answer was, honey, don't you understand? It's not for me. I'm rescuing. I'm resurrecting. If I don't bring these home, they're going to get in the crusher. They will be obliterated. No one will see this early, beautiful form of life that existed 380 million years ago. I mean, they dominated. Well, there were fish that dominated too. And the placoderm plates are behind you over there. So, I mean, once I realized the relationship between placoderms and humans, I got really jacked up and excited. I still am. But anyway, I didn't know that the key was going to get taken away from me at Sylvania. I didn't realize that new superintendents were going to come in and new lawyers were going to tell them, you can't let anybody into the quarry. So I can't get in. I'm done. But I've got 3 quarries that I still can get in. They're just not as good as the 2 that I thought I could be in forever. So what I was going to tell you was, I would say, honey, I promise you, I'm going to go to the quarry. If I find one, I will get back in the car and come right home. You can't believe how many freaking times I got out of the car, never even got on the shot pile, and look, there'd be a trilobite right there waiting for me. I'd pick it up, I'd call her on the cell phone and say, I already found the trilobite, I'm on my way home. I already found the trilobite, I'm on my way home. And there would be a shot that would go for a quarter of a mile. There would have been so much there had I only stayed and collected. But, you know, I thought, oh, it's a big deal. I've got so many other opportunities to come back. I didn't realize, no, you don't. So I can't imagine what I would have found, but I did cut it short many, many times to make Connie happy. I'm glad I made her happy. I'm glad I did, because she's the greatest.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah.
I will say this. I tried to get my kids involved. Yeah. Ryan, my son, I took him and he found a beautiful, beautiful 2-inch trilobite. We're riding home in the car. And I said, Ryan, you did a great job today. He found more than one, but there was one that was just spectacular. He said, Dad, he said, what's it worth? I said, well, they're worth $100 an inch, so that's worth $200. He says, when are we going to sell it? I said, Ryan, we're not selling these. We're keeping them. Somebody might want to study these someday. He looked at me and says, I'm done. I'm done. That was it. Ryan was not interested in collecting fossils just to collect fossils. He wasn't. Now, I'm also, with regard to the fossils, I do have a plate that needs to be identified. I do have a plate. A paleontologist sent me a text, said, I saw the picture you put on Facebook. He said, from what I can see, that would be a new species of placoderm. And he said, hang on to it, don't get rid of it, because in my next book, I want to use that. He's never come back. He lives in Chicago. He's there. I don't know what museum he's with, but he's never contacted me since. But at least I think I've got something that may be a new species, which is what we're all looking for. Y'all want to find something that no one has ever found before. And that's the good part about fossil collecting. I think I did, and I hope I can find out. Yeah. Artifacts took my life for, I don't know how many years. And then since 1990, fossils totally dominated. That's 30 years. 30 years, man. And that's why the collection looks like it does, because that's 30 years of collecting. Been lucky. This point right here, I pulled out of the creek, Muddy Creek Bank, between Hessville and Lindsay, by the swinging bridge. Just literally pulled it right out of the bank. I could go through all of these, but I'm not going to. But I'm taking you back to where I first started. This little punch, I call it a punch. It's got 3 sides. I've never seen anything like it anyplace else, but it's got 3 sides, and it's a punch I picked up on the cow path by Muddy Creek, where I would go as a kid all the time. Now, remember the story I told you? All of a sudden I stopped. I said, man, there's something out in the field out here by the Boy Scout woods.
Yeah.
This is the point right there.
Wow.
It's the biggest point I've ever found. And I mean, it was just one of those feelings. And that's when I was getting goofy and thinking that something was guiding me around. This is local stuff. This came from Pashita Creek, but it's kind of at the end of the paleo. It's before the early archaic. They call it kind of Plano. Yeah. This is my favorite knife of all time. I thought it was a piece of rubber. You know what I mean? When I found it, I looked, I saw it, and I wasn't going to pick it up because, a piece of tractor rubber. I picked it up, and there it was. And I actually, that's just, I thought it was paleo, but the possibility is it's probably woodland. It's probably from the Adena or the Hopewell culture. Now, this is paleo here for sure. This square knife is paleo. This is paleo, but they weren't found, they weren't found here at the paleo site. This is paleo, but it was found on the Sandusky River in Fremont rather than here. So, I mean, those don't count. The only ones that count are actually on the site, the Milky site. So I always say that my dream came true. And I always tell kids that the important thing is to have a dream, to have something to work for, to wish for, to earn, to make happen. And I was about 8 or 9. I was at the neighbor's because my mom sent me to all the old men in the neighborhood. And that's where I learned so much about the earlier history of Lindsay. And it was so great that Elmer would talk about his experiences as a kid. He had National Geographics there. And it was in those National Geographics, and this is in the 50s, like 54, 55, that I saw the article. They called it The First Americans. And they were doing a big spread on the Folsom people of New Mexico, which essentially, they weren't exactly Clovis, but they were the first Clovis people, essentially. Clovis was a little bit earlier than Folsom.
Mm-hmm.
And right then, I told Elmer, oh man, because I already found my arrowhead. I already knew that it wasn't Apache. I already knew that it was early. I want to find some of the first Americans here in Ohio, because that was New Mexico. And my dream came true. That's what this whole book was about, really, my dream coming true. And that's why I said, my dream came true. And it would have been terrible not to include that when that was the whole point of my ecstasy is having my dream come true. Kitty, you agree? Yeah, Kitty agrees. So thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for letting me share my dream.